All right, welcome to video 4. We're almost halfway there. Video 4 is all about Earth's atmosphere, and this is a very important unit that's going to, or part of the unit that we're going to revisit when we get into pollution, because the atmosphere is a very important part of the pollution in our world. Now, there are two layers of the atmosphere that are the inner layers, and these are the important layers that we look at a lot in this class: the troposphere and the stratosphere. The troposphere is what supports the life. Stratosphere contains the ozone layer, and realistically, what separates the troposphere from the stratosphere is the ozone layer, but the ozone layer is in the stratosphere. Now, what is an atmosphere? It's just a blanket of gases surrounding the Earth. It surrounds the Earth, allows us to live. The density in that, the density in the atmosphere changes based on the layer you're at. You're going to get less dense as you move higher in the atmosphere. Hopefully, you remember from when you learned in chemistry about how density of gases changes the pressure because of the amount of gas on top of you. And so as you increase your altitude, as you go higher in elevation, your pressure is going to release because there is less density. So this is a great graph to show you the pressure change along with the temperature changes, and how we define the differences between these layers. You need to remember that the troposphere is the very first layer. It's what supports our life. Then the stratosphere is above that. The ozone layer is really what separates the troposphere from the stratosphere. Notice that the temperature drops as you go up the troposphere, and then it kind of stabilizes at the ozone layer before it starts to rise again up to the stratosphere. The stratosphere is separated by the mesosphere. The mesosphere is where the temperature again begins to fall. And then finally you get to the thermosphere where, temperature, the temperature rises back up in the thermosphere because you're now in an area where there is less stuff in between you and the sun. So this is just an informative graph to kind of help you remember that temperature changes are really what define the different layers of the atmosphere. And just remember that the troposphere and stratosphere are separated by that ozone layer, which we'll talk more about when we get to pollution. So the troposphere, this is where 75 to 80% of the air mass of the Earth comes from. So this is the one that's closest to the Earth's surface. Excuse me. It is 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and then the rest is like carbon dioxide and other gases that we'll talk about a little bit more. The different air currents and the greenhouse gases are what affect the weather and climate, but the weather happens in the troposphere. The stratosphere is very similar, except that it has way less water because the water is heavier, and it has the ozone layer. The ozone layer filters the UV radiation that comes from the sun. Without the ozone layer, we would not live, because without it, we would be subjected to a high amount of UV radiation. And there's three types of UV. There's UVA, UVB, and UVC. We'll talk about those when we talk about pollution and when we talk about a little bit more in depth in human effects. So that is the end of the fourth video with the atmosphere. The next video will be all about global wind patterns.